Martinis are back on the menu, boys, because Bond is back. Hitman developer IO Interactive has given us our first look at 007 First Light. And the Bond that you're thinking of is not the Bond that we play. That's the Bond that we become. We start off at Bond's inception as 007. Think less Bond, James Bond, and more,
wait, which wire do I cut? Do you want to do this?
But that leaves plenty of room for reckless speculation, and that's just what we're going to do in this video. Let's break it down.
James Bond 007 First Light coming out from IO Interactive, who is the studio, of course, that brought us Hitman. And man, what a great series Hitman was. And it was weird because I've always said, man, what if somebody just put some hair on the guy and gave him a tuxedo? I mean, this would basically be a James Bond game already. I know we're both super excited about it. It'll be interesting to talk about it right now. And then after the gameplay reveal, be able to go, well, we were right about some things and not about some of the others. But super looking forward to this. Glad they're going with a young James Bond so we can kind of build him up from scratch. Although he does favor a very young Pierce Brosnan very much.
And he's also Irish. The voice actor is Irish as well.
Well, there we go. So what are your initial thoughts, man?
IOI have perfected this sort of espionage formula where you really truly can do whatever you want. That's a tagline that a bunch of games claim.
Yes.
That you can go and you can accomplish your different objectives in whatever way that you want. But usually it's either completely meaningless or it means that there's perhaps two ways to do it or something like that. Whereas with Hitman, it truly is your imagination is the limit. They throw all these things there. So I had forgotten that it existed and then saw that they had announced the name. And first of all, I will say that the name sounds like a Destiny expansion. I'm not a fan of the name First Light.
I hate the name.
It doesn't it doesn't have that immediate gravitas that some of the 007 movies have, it just doesn't.
It's lacking an Ian Fleming title is my biggest, that's what I said.
It doesn't really reach out and grab you, but title is minor compared to what we're going to get. And I'm excited. So I know that was part of the whole state of play and we got to see some teases of it. I think there might've been micro touches of gameplay, maybe one or two instances there that looked like they could have possibly been some very brief gameplay, but primarily just some setup, some story, some cinematic stuff, and that's about it. But
they showed all of our big ticket supporting characters. I mean, They showed M, they showed Q, they showed M's right hand person that's always kind of a prick in every movie and book, and Moneypenny, of course.
And some of these, at least some of them, maybe not all of the voice actors are this way, but at least some of them are also the visual representation of the character as well. They've clearly done. They've been given the Death Stranding treatment. There you go. Take a drink. I mentioned it. They've been given the Death Stranding treatment in that they are the likeness in game as well. But what I'm very curious about, and perhaps maybe even Jay might disagree with me on some of this here, but I'm curious about the gameplay in large part because we know that IOI, again, like I said, have mastered the espionage gameplay that is Hitman and the open arena that they kind of have where you can just do whatever you want, but you can become anyone that you want and you can play through in all these different ways of doing it. And that works for Hitman because that's Hitman's, that's Agent 47's MO is to, become whoever he needs to be to get where he needs to be and then go on. But so while I think that there are going to be elements that obviously they'll be able to move directly over to a 007 game, there is some of it that I think would not really work or not be best for a 007 game. So while 007 may at times have a false identity or something like that, where they'll set up an identity for him like Casino Royale or something like that, where he goes in and he's doing this whole thing. So he might have a false identity set up, but he's not this thing where he just goes and steals somebody's hat and jacket and masquerades as that person until he gets to the next thing, So it can't be just a straight copy paste of the Hitman formula. So they can certainly use some aspects of it, but they're going to have to do something that's original and exclusive to it. I would not think that it should be sort of just identity hopping for the gameplay.
Well, you found me, Mr. Bond. Actually, I've been here the whole time. I guess I made it pretty easy on you, but go ahead and just ease your finger off the trigger. And how about you use it to go ahead and click that like and subscribe, and we'll keep these coming to you every week.
I wanted to say this, and this might be controversial among me and you. I really liked where they went with the Daniel Craig series in regard to gadgets.
Oh yeah.
where they kind of toned it down. They made them more functional. They made them more realistic and viable. They weren't just gimmicks, right?
I'm
But
always
in
a fan whenever they do that.
But in a game, I am hoping at the very least that they give us, because Hitman's more of a disguise guy and method guy. James Bond's more of a let me use what's available to me guy. And so I hope they do. I mean, I saw the Aston Martin's a character in and of itself. I saw the old 63 Aston Martin DB5 in there, and I'm not asking for, Gatling cannons to come out of the headlights, but he's going to need some gadgets to get him through some of these segments. And in a game, gadgets work.
Yes, as long as they're not too crazy, I still want
Yes.
them to be very grounded in a way that you could believe that it's happening. But there is definitely a line that you can blur where even if it's maybe you're able to stretch the line a bit more than you could for a movie and it still feel grounded in a game, because Hitman does that, where Hitman has some absolutely outlandish setups and scenarios and ways that you can do something, but you're still, because it is a game, you can still
Right.
like let that sort of, you can let it slide. In Hitman, you can actually literally use a banana peel to make somebody fall. Where if you saw that in a movie, you're like, oh my god, this is ridiculous.
I can tell you my number one gadget in the latest Hitman trilogy was the coin. If you go back and watch any of my old gameplay, I used that more than anything else. Ding.
Yep. That's how I get people to move. Like, oh, there's somebody at that door. Like, not anymore.
But I'm not saying that we should be able to float down the Nile River in a hollowed out alligator carcass, and we don't need the jetpack. And one thing I did think was cool, though, and I think you'll like this too, is that one of the pre-order bonuses is a golden Walther.
Nice. I did not know that.
Yeah. So if you pre-order the game, and I didn't even make it, I didn't even get to look at the other. I was so mesmerized by the golden Walther PPK that I just missed all the other pre-order bonuses.
Also, probably no one more excited about this than Walther. Their business is probably about to go through the roof.
Yeah, them and Aston. Aston always makes a ton of money.
Well, one is a bit more obtainable than the other.
Very, very true.
Here's one thing, though. So, talking about what it might not share with Hitman, in that we both agree, James Bond just isn't, like I say, he's just not the identity hopping kind of way to get things done. It doesn't fit. So they'll have to find their own way. I definitely think that's a thing where having that is going to be a good thing, and it will be helpful, but it can't be the loop. That can't be the gameplay loop. So they're going to have to come up with something that's compelling, that's exclusive to the 007 series that they're working on. But the other thing is that the whole deal with Hitman is the main goal that you're trying to do is to avoid any sort of confrontation. You don't want a gunfight. You don't want a hand-to-hand fight. Your whole deal is to kind of get to a point, pick your spot, snipe somebody, or make a chandelier fall on top of them, or a stuffed alligator, or something like that. It's some crazy thing where you're really not doing anything. So you're sort of making your way undetected somewhere. You do your thing, and then you make your way undetected out, and that's a successful run. Anytime that you have gotten into any sort of confrontation in Hitman, aside from the fact that it's very difficult to actually complete the mission at that point, once you actually get into a confrontation, but it's not very fluid. If you get into a gunfight, it's not very fluid at all in Hitman.
I think they're trying to show you that's what not to do.
Yeah, the hand-to-hand combat aspects of it are kind of janky. So if 007 is in fact going to be more heavily reliant on some of these things, where obviously it's not going to be constant shootouts all the time, but surely you're going to have some times where you're exchanging fire, going to have some times where you're doing a bit of hand-to-hand combat, very a la Mission Impossible kind of a sort of thing. So I'm wondering how much they've been able to polish up the actual sort of action sequences that they've really been able to put on the back burner for years, because they weren't really an essential part of the Hitman games.
Yeah, and so and I always think of the opening sequence to GoldenEye, because not the game, the movie, although the game was very similar. On the dam, he has to sneak in through the top of the dam, and he rappels down the side of it, and he comes in through the bathroom. And I think they need to create sequences like that. I also think the game needs to be dialogue heavy at certain points, sort of like Alpha Protocol, where you have like a direct response, a suave response, and a neutral.
Some RPG elements then.
Yeah, so I think it needs that, because James Bond does that. There's times when he's super direct. There are times when he's at the bar and it needs to be the suave answer. I think they're going to need to incorporate some Alpha Protocol / Mass Effect stuff in there as well.
That does bring up another thing, though. You mentioned sort of the way to handle perhaps some dialogue options or something along those lines, and of course we mentioned that they'll have to find some way to kind of like polish up the action sequences. Another thing is the levels. Is it going to be a thing where it's like, okay, this is your mission, this is the arena that it's happening at, go do your thing and do James Bond things and get this done? Or is it going to be more like games past where it's very linear, where it's a kind of a path that you walk and you have to go through levels and you have to clear various rooms or hallways or whatever of enemies to get to the next thing? So I do wonder if it's going to be one large playground or if it's going to be more linear where you have to go from A to B and then leave at C to get out.
Well, if I'm thinking about Hitman, they never gave us like an open world. The scenes you were in were as open as they could be. Thinking about the Showstopper, the Paris.
I mean, you'd have entire cities at your disposal. So, yeah.
And that's another thing. I think they need to travel extensively in this game. I think that'll help sell it and hit some of those places that we like Morocco and places that James Bond really kind of fits. Paris, those kind of joints.
Another thing that is going to be interesting to determine or find out whenever it comes to the structure of how they lay out the game is because Hitman, that every single thing that you go to, what your mission is going to be. Your mission is going to be to take somebody out, at least one person, sometimes multiple. Yeah. But that's your job. You go there, you take somebody out. That is the mission. And the variety comes from the area that they're in, the way that they're protected, or their behaviors, all that kind of stuff. But James Bond, that's not the case. James Bond doesn't go and kill. Well, I mean, I guess he kind of does tend to kill anybody everywhere he goes, but it's not the intention. It's not the mission. So I do wonder if what that structure is going to be. If instead of, hey, go here, kill this person every level, if it will be something like Casino Royale, go here, get 100K up on the house and retire for the evening, or something like that. I don't know. But what will the mission structure actually be like?
Well, I mean, if you think about it, let's say you have, and I'm just going to use this as an example, say you have not Q, but M in your ear on an earpiece, or you have a source already that you've worked up and you go to an area and you go, hey, you need to meet Bob Not So Bright tonight at 7:00. So go hang out in the casino for a while and we'll let you know when Bob's on the scene and you can go meet with him. And maybe during that piece, you meet a couple other people that are able to give you intel on Bob. So you go armed with more ammunition when you have your meeting with Bob, or you can just not do any of that, right? And just do what you want.
So if you were gonna place money on structure, whether it be a series of open arenas like Hitman or something more linear like previous 007 games, which do you lean towards it being?
Considering that this is IO's first James Bond game and they have a proven formula with Hitman, I think we're going to have multiple open sandbox areas, because why reinvent the wheel that you haven't broken?
100% agree.
Stay with what you know, and that way you can focus. Okay, we're going to do what we did in Hitman, but let's focus on the story. Let's focus on the content within those sandboxes. Why are we going to London in the first place? Are we just going there because we want to go to London? What are we doing? Kind of thing. So, yeah, I think they stay with the formula they know. And then maybe if they get good reviews, they can play around, start toying with some new ideas.
Well, I 100% agree with all that, because it's one of those things where they went with IO for a reason, and that reason is because they did Hitman. So dance with who brought you. On that situation. If they wanted you to be able to make this game because of your work with Hitman, go ahead and use the things that worked with Hitman and then work around them to bend them to your will. Do you think that the mission structure will be go here, kill person, or do you think that it will have more variety in that it will not be kill something in every mission? Or I'm sure the option will be either to kill random people, random bad guys, but that the actual objective will be kill someone or accomplish a particular task that will then allow the story to move forward?
I think very few missions will be hit missions.
I agree.
I think it's going to be, hey, so-and-so's got a file on this new biological weapon and you need to break into their estate and download this file and get it to blah, blah, blah. I think that's going to be more of the mission style than, hey, go here and whack this guy.
100%. I think it will be an international chase.
Yeah.
Trying to get, and they mention in this state of play, they mention in one section 009 and how dangerous he is. So I would guess that you were going after a rogue agent who knows all of your tricks, has gone through the same training that you have, and you're going after this rogue agent. So what I anticipate it being is a globe-trotting chase, you chasing this guy from one continent and one city to the next, and accomplishing things like Jay said there, where you're like, oh, steal a file, do this, do that, with the ultimate goal of getting to Agent 009. That's what I think will do. But I 100% agree. I don't think that they're going to say, oh, yeah, you have to kill somebody here. I think they might do a thing like Hitman, where once you go through the game, then you then have access to this arena and you can kind of play around with it even more. You can create your own missions that you can share online with people and friends. I think they'll do that kind of thing again. But yeah, I think whenever you're playing the game, you're playing the story, I think that it's going to be varied, and that it's not going to be just about killing people. I think you're going to have tasks that you're going to do and tasks you're going to complete, and that's going to move the story forward. And I'm actually looking forward to that variety and that change up.
You know, I always think, what was the linchpin that somebody said, IO, you get the license to James Bond? And I always think of that very first mission on Hitman 1, Paris Showstopper, where he goes to the fashion show. There was multiple options of poisoning people with their drinks. There was going down into the cellar where the wine cellar was and, sprucing up the wine a little bit. There was all kinds of different things. So I think we'll see that. Other pieces, I'm already thinking about DLC. What would be cool is taking some of the favorite James Bond movies or stories from the Ian Fleming books and making those DLC episodes.
Well, that would be awesome. And that would be great ways to sort of be able to replay those things. And another thing where this would be, it's not DLC, but it is something that Hitman did that really kept it fresh, where they would have these limited time targets. And they had all sorts of people do this, be these particular roles, and for a week, 2 weeks, they just had this mission. It wasn't really DLC, but it was just like this throwaway mission. It didn't actually contribute to the story or anything like that. But the whole point was you have to go and you have to take out this target, and you could only do it once. Once you succeeded, that was it. That was your one playthrough. So it was this very limited time. You had a limited window that you could play it, and then once you completed it, it was done. And I think that's a really clever idea. And it also, while Hitman doesn't have a lot of sort of cinematic cutscenes or anything like that, it's really more done through your handler's voice instructions before every mission. Obviously, it's changing in 007 because we already saw a lot of the cutscene stuff. That was what the trailer mainly was. But in these little missions, obviously they did all the mocap and facial capture and all this stuff for these celebrities, and I think they're clearly putting what they've learned there into 007.
Yeah, and I love the way Hitman did that. Although after they released World of Assassination, that's now changed a little bit. They rotate them in, and you can still do them, but they're still timed. And like after a couple of weeks, they'll rotate out. They'll rotate in, Sean Bean's episode, which was great, by the way. I didn't get to play the Conor McGregor one. It got pulled for his scandal before I got to play it. So
he took himself out.
Yeah.
I don't know. This is one of the rare marriages where you hear that somebody's making a game. So there's a lot of times you'll hear that somebody's making a game and you're like, oh, okay, let's see what they do with it. Like whenever Respawn got the Star Wars game, and it was like, oh, Respawn, who's known for all these first-person shooters, they got the rights to make a single-player Star Wars game, and that's how we got Jedi Fallen Order, and those turned out to be great. But while I was intrigued by it, I was just like, okay, let's see how it works out. But this is one where I'm genuinely excited for. Whenever you find out that IO is making a 007 game, you're like, perfect. Who better? Like whenever you found out that Larian Studios was making Baldur's Gate 3, where you're like, oh man, this is gonna be insane. Even before you know anything about it, you just know their previous work. So this is one of those where it's like, okay, these guys are making 007. I'm in. I'm excited. I'm curious to see how it works out, and I want to know how accurate our assumptions are.
Well, there you have it. Those are our thoughts as it stands right now. We look forward to the gameplay trailer that we get later this summer and a deep dive into the whole game, and we'll reevaluate and see how right or wrong we were. Tell us in the comments what you think we got right, what you think we got wrong, and what you think that we've totally missed. And don't forget to subscribe on your way out. We'll see you in the next one.